Okay, so here we are, and this is a part one of a Little Women mini series about just how different you are in regards to when coaches are training men and women. Often, I think coaches just categorize women as little men and train everybody the same, and it shouldn't be that way. And today, what we're going to discuss, we're going to go through just some key elements in regards to your hormones. And how that can impact your training, what it should look like, and if there are any things or some warning signs that you should be looking out for, because this can tell you a lot about your overall health and how you can progress potentially more quickly with your training. So if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to lose body fat, you're trying to get stronger, you're trying to look better, then this can certainly help. And it also can help you mentally, knowing that your body's going to be going through changes each month, and you shouldn't expect the absolute peak at certain times within the month. So first things first, what we have up here, this is just what a normal cycle for your period looks like. And on average, they're around 28 days. So from day one, when you have stopped bleeding, that is then going through to 28. It can usually be between 22 and 36 days, but this is just the average, so 28 days. Now, what on earth happens in those times is really important, because certain hormones become dominant or predominant, and the others take a back seat. And what that does is it changes your body's physiology, and it changes how you would respond to exercise, how you would feel, certain cravings, the amount of calories that you would need. And this is every single month. Like, this is not just, every now and then. This is every single month that your body's going through these changes. So it's pretty important to have a nutritional strategy and a training strategy that accommodates these factors. So as you can see here, in the first 14 days, we have the red hormone here, which is estrogen. So as you can see, this is the dominant hormone within the first 14 days. That would be at its peak. And that's really important, because in the first 14 days for women, that is what is going to make you feel awesome. You're going to train better, you're going to lift better, you're going to look better, you won't feel so puffy or bloated, you won't feel like you're holding onto all this water, and your coach is just saying, oh, don't worry, you're just crazy, like, who cares, it's not a big deal. Look, I get it, this first 14 days is a dream. That's where women perform their best and get the most out of their body. So it's pretty easy to see why you should be tailoring nutrition and training to predominantly fit into that phase. Now, in the second half, as you can see here, we have ovulation here in the middle, which is stimulated by follicle stimulating hormone. So obviously, boom, here we go. Ovulation's kicked in. Progesterone starts coming down. Estrogen starts coming down. So that is no longer going to be the dominant hormone as we shift into the second 2 weeks of the luteal phase. So when ovulation is started, then estrogen comes down and progesterone starts to go up and become the dominant hormone within your body for the last 2 weeks. Now, in this last 2 week phase, this affects women so drastically and differently, it's not even funny. I've had some women put on up to 9 kilos in this phase, and then lose it all and plus extra when they get back into this phase. So put on 9 kilos over this phase, and then back here, after they've gone through their cycle, had their period, they've finished bleeding, and then boom, 10 kilos lost. Like, that's just insane. And this also needs to be factored into conditions like PCOS. That's going to impact all of these things pretty hectically. I'll do a separate video on PCOS. So in regards to these two phases, if we just bring it back to these two phases, as you can see underneath here, there's going to be certain elements that become more prevalent, and you can probably attest to this way better than I can. Obviously, I don't have a period, but from my history working with my clients, through these first 14 days, you train better, you feel better in the gym, you lift heavier. Now, also, you have an increased carb tolerance. So you can eat more carbs and they don't go onto the hips. So you will utilize carbohydrates better in your muscles, meaning that you're not going to be storing anything excess as potential body fat. Now, also, as I mentioned, you will feel stronger, you perform better. You can go in and you can have a crack and lift heavier and try and get PRs and expect more from your body in these first 2 weeks. Estrogen being the dominant hormone, it's anabolic. That is what helps women build muscle and perform better in the gym, feel great. So estrogen is amazing in these first 2 weeks. You'll feel leaner and you will hold on to less water. So a lot of women, when they're going through these balances and crazy differences when they get their cycle, or if you were to measure yourself weekly, you might see in this second half that you've put on 3 kilos, 4 kilos, up to 10 kilos. And that can largely be attributed to more water retention. So that is generally what happens. So you might feel puffy and look puffy, you might feel bloated in the second half here. So in the first 2 weeks, you actually have less water retention and the scales will drop, and then you're like, what the hell, what's going on? And so this is really important. And it's important for you to know that that exists. So we're going to get into this, so what goes on in the second half now, but all of these things, these key points, they're so important for women to understand because it can help them shift their mentality of, especially if they're looking at the scales, they can understand that weight gain and fluctuation is completely normal, especially when you're going through this every 28 days. And when you know that, you can get on with the task at hand, focus on your training, focus on your nutrition, because when you get back to this stage, back to here, you should see a big improvement in your measurements, in your body fat levels, etc., even if this phase here doesn't look like you're going great. And so in this phase here, in the second half, when we have progesterone being the dominant hormone, your carb sensitivity or your carb tolerance, insulin sensitivity is going to decrease. So you can't eat as many carbs in this phase, or you shouldn't eat as many carbs, which you are way more likely to crave when you're in this phase. You should actually be reducing your carb intake and potentially increasing your fat intake, so that then you're less likely to store this as body fat, because you're not going to be able to use it and prioritize it into the muscle tissues as well as if you were in weeks 1 and 2. So hopefully that makes sense. And it probably does to a lot of you as to why you are in the second half, or you're getting close to the end of your cycle, and then you're reaching for all sugary treats and nice carby things. So that could make sense there for a lot of you. Now, also, when you're in this phase, if you're training in the gym and you're working hard and you're exercising, you can get dizzy, you can feel faint, you can look pale, and that is quite common for people to go through when they're exercising, when they're on their cycle. Also, here, water retention. So this is a massive one, and this is something that I really want to hammer home, is that when you have this dominant hormone progesterone, you are going to retain more water. And if you're retaining more water, you're going to have more weight on the scales. And so this is super important for women to mentally understand that it's not something that they're doing. They're not doing anything wrong, especially if you're dieting still, or you're monitoring your calories and you're tracking your intake and you're still doing and putting in the work, but the scales keep going up. That's not something that you can stop. That is something that is going to occur all the time. And if what happens is, usually women see the scales going up, they're like, oh, what's the point? Like, why keep pushing through this if I'm just gaining weight anyway and I'm still working my ass off? Well, the point is that when you get back to here and your hormones switch, you will see those results start to kick in and come through. But you won't if you fall off the wagon and go, oh, well, I'm just gaining weight like crazy anyway. So that is really important. Pay attention to that. And if you're a person that weighs yourself regularly, that's great. I think it's great. But if you weigh yourself regularly and it mentally affects you, that's not great. That's not healthy. So if you weigh yourself regularly to get data so that we can make decisions and we can make objective decisions, not emotional or rational ones, then you will get results much better through here. So the scales, they give you data and it's objective and it should have no emotion attached to it. If you weigh yourself once and you go, oh, and it's on the worst time of the week, so if you weigh yourself, day 23 and you're 4 kilos heavier and you've been dieting, really doing hard work, you're 4 kilos heavier comparatively to here, it's just going to occur. Like, that is okay for that to occur. So you have to understand that knowledge so that you can go, all right, that's fine. I know it's going to disappear. It's going to go when I get back here. I've been putting in the work. I'll keep putting in the work. Fuck you, hormones. I'll show you. So that when you get back to here, that goes. So just to be clear, please don't judge your progress by scales, especially if you only weigh yourself rarely. If you weigh yourself here versus here, that's a disaster. You're asking for trouble and mental stress. So avoid that if you can. Now, here also, what I also have alluded to a little bit, when you're in this second half, in the luteal phase, you're going to crave more food. You're going to be more hungry, which obviously sucks, because if you're reaching for carbs and you have a decreased carb tolerance, then where's that going to go? Well, it's not going to be utilized in the muscles as effectively, so it's going to store potentially as body fat. So if you're hungry, you need to actually eat more food in this phase. I personally give my partner, Zoe, dark chocolate. So I'll give her up to anywhere from 100 to 200 calories worth of dark chocolate during this phase. One, because it's higher in fats, and that means she's not going to be getting a ton of carbs, which she's not going to really utilize well anyway. She's going to get some chocolate, which usually nails a craving, and it helps with mental stress, and it's just a bit of a treat. And she can afford that, because in this phase, your metabolic rate is actually elevated. It can be anywhere from 100 to 350, 400 calories per day that you need, so that then you are supporting healthy cycle. Now, that's a pretty big number, 400 calories per day. So if you're doing a diet in this phase and you're in a deficit, so let's just say you're eating less. So most women eat around 1,000 calories, which is ridiculously low for a lot of people, and they're trying to lose weight. So if then in weeks 3 and 4, you are still eating that number, that low number, and you haven't put your calories up a little bit to factor in for the more calories you're going to need for the metabolic rate, you're going to be in a bigger deficit. So it means you're going to be way hungrier, because your body's looking for more calories, and you can give it to your body. But if you have that huge deficit, then the chances of binging, the chances of reaching for junk food, the chances of reaching for really high calorie, delicious stuff is really high. So I talked about with Lady this morning, and peanut butter. So things like peanut butter, you'd be like, oh my God, yes, get in my body. Like, super high in calories, really easy to eat a lot of it, and it tastes awesome. And you could liken that to Nutella, you could liken it to a burger, you could liken it to anything that is super high in calories and it's not very much food. So peanut butter is a perfect example there. So just pay attention to these things. Like, you can actually eat more. I give Zoe more calories in that phase, so that then if her cycle, so that then she's getting enough fuel to, one, not binge eat, so that she's comfortable, and to also, it's like a little treat. It's nice, it's good. Have some chocolate, like, use it as a reward. You're training hard, you're still doing all your dieting. Obviously your weight's going to fluctuate, so just accept that. That's fine, because when we get back to here, it's go time and you'll crush it and your training's ready to go. So as I mentioned here, food and metabolic rate, so you can increase your calories a little bit. I would personally only recommend mostly fats, not carbohydrates, because of this reason. Your insulin sensitivity is lower. And yeah, so these are just some of the considerations. Like, these are just basic considerations for when thinking about how to adequately program for a woman who obviously goes through these changes all the time. So all of this change in hormones impacts your training, impacts your nutrition, and I'm going to talk about those two separately to this video, because nutrition needs to be periodize so that you can get the most out of your body and make sure that you don't have anything here. And this is the same training as well. Like we want to avoid dysfunctions, and dysfunctions are super common, especially in people that have chronically dieted themselves or gone been yo-yo and been all over the place, like starvation to binging, starvation, binging, just so they can lose weight. So this is usually something that arises, and it usually comes from a variety of factors. So there are two different types. So oligomenorrhea, let me make sure that I said that correct. Yes, oligomenorrhea is this one here. So that would be irregular. So that would be things like spotting or irregular cycles, not really sure, no real consistency. And then obviously none, which this is called amenorrhea. So this one is where you have lost your cycle. Now, with these things here, basically, if you don't have your cycle, that's your vagina saying, fuck you, you're not healthy enough to procreate. And we're not going to allow normal function of this to occur because of a few different reasons that it may be. So some reasons that these things might occur. Okay, where are we? So irregular. Okay, so it can be like a huge calorie restriction. So if you are always chronically dieting and eating way less, you are at risk of losing your cycle because you are not giving your body enough calories for the reproductive cycle or your cycle to remain regular and working properly. Now, also, we have, if you're incredibly lean, so a lot of the time if people or women are competing, they can lose their cycle, and this is going to hugely depend on whether the coach is properly utilizing all nutritional methods, all nutritional practices well. And so that means monitoring micronutrients, making sure there's enough micronutrients to support healthy function. Calories obviously are going to be pretty low depending upon the body fat percentage of the woman. So this can also make this disappear. And it would be quite common in the industry for this to happen for women, which it doesn't have to if you're doing nutrition properly and dieting down properly and you have good reverse dieting practices in place. Okay, next, what else? So, obviously, so obesity, let's go another one here. If you are overweight, obesity, okay, so you can actually get a big excess of estrogen when you are overweight, which can also lead to metabolic syndrome, so things like inflammation, poor blood glucose control, so your body's ability to utilize glucose and being insulin sensitive would be compromised if you are overweight, and you will just have a lot more visceral body fat, which can lead to excess estrogen, which is not a good thing, and there are a lot of side effects to that. I'm not going to go into side effects of higher progesterone or higher estrogen and things like that, but it's a pretty huge laundry list. So if any of this is sounding like, oh, I want more information on this, if you're wanting more information on potential progesterone and estrogen dominance or symptoms and causes and what may be going on, then just reach out, because I can help you potentially just go through what may be causing it. But other things here in regards to what can cause dysfunction. Eating disorders can also lead to dysfunction, obviously, because it generally is a binge and restrict huge calorie restriction, so the body would be placing great amounts of stress, which can lead to dysfunction of this hormonal cycle, which if it's disrupted, you're not going to get the most out of your training. You're going to struggle losing weight. You're going to struggle feeling good, feeling healthy. If you're trying to get pregnant, that is going to be interrupted also drastically. It's going to be hard to get pregnant with any of this going on, with dysfunction going on. These are all going to factor in and be issues. Okay, now, cool. Another one can be over-exercising. So if you are excessively exercising, that can obviously also create a lack of recovery, which then places huge stress on the body. And if you're over-exercising, not eating enough food, then it's obvious that it's going to come back into this factor, and it can upset both of these. It can be irregular or completely lose your cycle. So just be mindful. Exercising, obesity, calories, food disorders can all contribute to these. Also, we can have stress levels. That's going to significantly play. So stress is the root of all evil, especially just literally anything. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to gain muscle, if you're trying to sleep better, stress is something that everyone needs to be better at managing, because that's going to throw a spanner in the works in every junction in your body. So if cortisol is chronically elevated, nothing works properly. Digestion doesn't work properly. Cognition doesn't work properly. The list is freaking endless. So stress is massive. People need to be on top of that and have utilized strategies to manage it. And also, what it could be here is fat intake. So if you're not having enough calories from fat, and this one's important, this one also is usually where people go wrong. Fat literally makes up the cells, the membrane around your cells in your body. So if they're unhealthy, or if they're not doing well, nothing in your body is going to be functioning particularly well. So if you're not having fats, that is the building blocks of all hormones. Fats create hormones. You need cholesterol, you need different sources of fats. So the different branches, saturated, monounsaturated, poly, etc. You need these things so that you can be creating and maintaining healthy hormone cycles and production. That is men and women. Obviously with women having a huge requirement for health regarding around their hormonal cycle with progesterone, estrogen, fats are really important, and you need to be getting enough per day so that you can function optimally. Cool. Now, that's all I really wanted to cover today. It is a long video, I apologize, but if any of this resonates with you and you need or you think you would like more information regarding any of this stuff, or if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments or just reach out to me. You can send me a DM. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if I can. But overall, this is what a lot of coaches just aren't really paying attention to, aren't focusing on, aren't prioritizing, because if that was the case, their clients would be much healthier mentally, would have less hang-ups on scales, would have much better nutritional practices, would not be so focused on always looking at the scales and thinking, I need to lose weight. It would help them process things better week to week, knowing month to month. That's when you should compare, month to month instead of week. And overall, to just create better health. Like, health is what drives everything. If you're healthy, then weight loss is easy. And so if you're chronically dieted, you're going to struggle with all of this. This is not going to be a healthy process. You're not going to have potentially optimal ratios of progesterone and estrogen. You could have chronic dominance of estrogen hormones, which is a problem in itself. You could have chronic progesterone, like hot flushes, and the list is endless. So look, we can go into different topics and different little key areas. I'm going to talk about nutrition next, and why nutrition should be structured around this, and how it can be structured around this. And it won't be as long, because I feel like this is probably a bit long, but hopefully this helps some people understand what on earth's going on in their body, how they can make sure that they can better understand their body and themselves. So, cool. That's it.